The Texas plains stretched endlessly under a violet dusk sky, the horizon glowing with the last embers of day. Coyotes cried in the distance, and the wind carried the scent of dust and pine. To most folks, it was just another night. But to Ethan Callahan, it was the night that could decide the rest of his life. He stopped at the rusted gate of the Callahan ranch, his boots sinking into the cold earth. The gate leaned to one side, its hinges eaten by years of neglect. The once proud ranch had fallen to ruin after his father's death, swallowed by debt and whispered about like it was cursed. But tonight, a deal had been struck. Tonight, Ethan had one chance to reclaim it. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "A man's land is more than dirt, son. It's his blood, his legacy. Don't ever give it up without a fight." Ethan's hand trembled as he pushed open the gate. Everyone in town had warned him. Nobody dared set foot on the ranch after dark. For years, it was said to be guarded by 3 giant women, Mara, Celine, and Thora. Women taller than doorframes, with strength beyond reason and voices that could make the bravest men tremble. Some said they were cursed spirits. Others swore they were the daughters of the land itself, bound to test any soul who wanted to claim the ranch. But the condition was clear. If Ethan survived the night with them, the land would return to him. If he failed, he would be banished from it forever. The ranch house loomed in the distance, its roof sagging, its windows glowing faintly as though the house itself was alive. Ethan carried only a lantern, his father's worn leather jacket, and his own determination. The door creaked as he entered. Dust swirled in the air, catching the weak glow of the lantern. The silence was heavy, pressing against his chest. Then the floor shook. From the shadows, a deep voice rolled like thunder. "So another fool dares to enter." Ethan froze, his breath catching. From the far end of the hallway, a massive figure emerged. She ducked beneath the doorway as if the house itself was too small for her. She was at least 10 feet tall, with fiery red hair braided down her back, arms built with the strength of 100 ranch hands, and eyes that glowed faintly gold. "I am Mara," she said, her voice like the crack of a whip, "and you will prove your strength, or be broken." Before Ethan could respond, another sound filled the room, a whisper like the wind in the trees. A second figure appeared, her long black hair flowing down her shoulders. Taller still than Mara, her presence carried sadness that pressed down on Ethan's chest. "I am Celine," she said softly, though her words cut sharper than steel. "I will weigh your heart. If it falters, you will be consumed." Ethan's pulse raced. And then the third came. The ground trembled under her heavy boots. A storm seemed to follow her as she stepped forward, her golden hair whipping in the unseen wind. Her voice boomed like thunder over the plains. "I am Thora. I will test your spirit. Should it shatter, you will never rise again." The 3 giants circled him, their shadows stretching across the broken floorboards. Ethan's lantern flickered, his knees threatening to buckle. But then he clenched his fists. "I'm not here to fight you," he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "I'm here for what's mine. The Callahan Ranch belonged to my father, and I won't rest until I've claimed it back." Mara's lips curved into a half-smile, though her eyes still burned. "Then survive the night. Face what we place before you. If you succeed, the land is yours. If you fail—" She leaned closer, her hot breath washing over him. "You will join the others who tried." The first trial began in the barn. Mara led Ethan there, her massive strides shaking the ground. Inside, stacks of heavy stones lay in a pile, dust coating them like forgotten relics. "Strength of body," Mara declared. "Build the wall before the rooster crows, or the stones will bury you." Ethan's heart sank. He wasn't weak, but compared to Mara's towering frame, he was nothing. Still, he rolled up his sleeves, took a deep breath, and began. The stones were heavier than he expected. His muscles burned after the first few lifts, sweat pouring down his face despite the cold night. His hands blistered, skin tearing, as he dragged and stacked each rock. Every time he thought he'd collapse, Mara's stern eyes bored into him, daring him to quit. But Ethan remembered his father's words. A Callahan never quits when the land calls. He gritted his teeth, lifting another stone, then another. Hours passed, the barn echoing with his grunts of effort. Finally, just as his legs buckled, he placed the last stone on the wall. He collapsed to the dirt floor, chest heaving. Mara's shadow loomed over him. For the first time, her expression softened. "You are not as weak as you look," she said. But the night was far from over. Celine appeared in the doorway, her dark eyes glowing faintly. Now, strength of heart. She led him back into the house, into a room he didn't recognize. The walls were lined with old photographs, faded pictures of families, children, men with proud faces. Ethan frowned. These weren't his family. Yet as he stared at them, something strange happened. The images changed. He saw his father lying pale and sick in bed. He saw his mother weeping silently by the window. He saw himself younger, helpless as the ranch was stripped from them. The weight of it all crushed him, and he sank to his knees. Celine's towering form bent low, her voice soft. "Do you grieve?" Ethan's throat tightened. Tears blurred his vision. "Every day," he whispered. "I lost him. I lost everything. But I still love, I still hope. And I will fight to keep what's left." For a long moment, Celine said nothing. Then she touched his cheek, her massive hand warm and gentle. "Your heart beats true," she murmured. "You may pass." Ethan stumbled back into the hallway, exhausted but alive. The house creaked, the wind howled outside, and he knew only one trial remained. The floor shook as Thora approached, her golden hair glinting in the lantern light. "Strength of spirit," she thundered. "This is the test that breaks all men." She led him into the night. The plains stretched out under the stars, the air heavy and cold. Wolves howled in the distance and shadows seemed to writhe across the ground. "Fear will come for you," Thora said. "Stand or run, choose." And then the night itself turned against him. Shadows twisted into monstrous forms, whispering his name. The ground shook and a voice, his father's voice, cried out in pain. Ethan's heart pounded. His legs screamed to run, but he planted his boots firmly. He clenched his fists and shouted into the storm, "I'm not afraid. This land is mine, it's my family's, and I will not abandon it." The illusions shattered like glass. The whispers fell silent. The wolves stopped howling. When Ethan opened his eyes, Thora stood before him, her stormy gaze softer now. "You have spirit," she said. The three women gathered once more as dawn broke, their massive forms glowing in the golden light of morning. Ethan, trembling but unbroken, stood before them. "You have survived," Mara declared. "You have endured," Celine said. "You are worthy," Thora finished. The ranch stretched out behind them, bathed in the light of sunrise. For the first time, Ethan saw it not as ruin, but as hope. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered. The three giants exchanged one final look. Then, like mist in the morning sun, they faded away. The Callahan Ranch was his. But Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The sun rose over the plains, painting the land in gold. Ethan Callahan stood at the edge of his father's ranch, the cold morning air filling his lungs. For a moment he simply let it sink in. The Callahan Ranch was his again. The deal was done. The trials survived. But as he looked at the sagging fences, the collapsed barn roof, and the fields choked with weeds, reality weighed heavy on him. The ranch wasn't the proud legacy his father had left. It was broken, and now he was alone to rebuild it. Or at least, that's what he thought. In the first week was nothing but sweat and back-breaking work. Ethan rose before the sun and worked until stars filled the sky. He mended fences with splintered hands, cleared weeds until his back screamed, and patched holes in the farmhouse roof with whatever scraps he could find. The townsfolk came to watch sometimes, standing at the dusty road with their arms folded. They whispered loud enough for him to hear, "Fool boy. The ranch will eat him alive. He'll end up just like the rest, broken." Mark my words, those women ain't done with him yet." Ethan ignored them, though each word cut deep. He remembered Celine's trial, strength of heart, and he whispered to himself, "I will not falter." Still the nights were the hardest. Though the three giants had faded with the dawn, Ethan felt them still. When he struggled to lift a beam, he swore he heard Mara's voice in the back of his mind. Strength of body, boy. Push through. When loneliness pressed against him, and grief for his father threatened to crush his chest, he felt Celine's gentle presence. Your heart beats true. And when doubt screamed that he was a fool to try, the echo of Thora's thunder shook through him. Stand, do not run. They weren't gone. They lived in him now. One evening, after a long day repairing the barn, Ethan sat on the porch, lantern light flickering at his side. He gazed at the field still half swallowed by weeds. His body ached so badly he could barely move. For the first time since surviving the trials, despair whispered at the edges of his mind. What if they were right? He muttered to the empty air. What if this land really is cursed? What if I can't do it alone? The wind stirred. The old wood of the house creaked, and then a shadow moved. Ethan's heart leapt. Standing at the edge of the field, half shrouded in mist, was Mara, not as solid as before, but present. She towered over the weeds, her fiery braid glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You are not alone," she said, her voice rumbling like distant thunder, and beside her appeared Selene, her dark hair flowing like the night sky. "Your grief will not consume you. Let it guide you." Finally, Thora stepped forward, her golden hair whipping in the wind. "You are the land's keeper now. Stand firm." Ethan's throat tightened. He blinked, and they were gone. Only the night remained, but his despair had lifted. The next challenge came not from the land, but from people. A month after he reclaimed the ranch, 3 men from town rode up on horseback. They were ranchers themselves, and their leader, a broad-shouldered man named Harris, smirked as he dismounted. "Callahan," Harris drawled, spitting into the dirt. "You think you can bring this place back to life? You're a boy playing at being a man. Why don't you sell it off? Save yourself the trouble." Ethan stood tall, though his hand shook. "This is my family's land. I'm not selling." Harris's eyes narrowed. "Then don't come crying when it eats you alive." The men laughed and rode off, leaving dust in their wake. Ethan clenched his fists. He thought of running after them, shouting, but then he heard Thora's echo in his mind. "Stand, do not run." He let the anger settle, and instead returned to work. Over the next weeks, Ethan slowly turned the ranch back to life. He rebuilt the barn roof plank by plank. He cleared the fields, his hands bleeding but steady. He planted seeds in the soil, whispering a prayer over each row. And for the first time in years, green shoots began to break the earth. The townsfolk who had mocked him began to grow curious. They stopped whispering and started watching in silence. A few even nodded to him as they passed. It wasn't respect yet, but it was something. One night, as a storm rolled over the plains, Ethan sat inside the farmhouse, listening to the rain pound the roof. Lightning lit up the sky and thunder shook the windows. He felt small, fragile, a single soul in the middle of a vast, unforgiving land. And then he heard footsteps, heavy, steady, shaking the floor. His lantern flickered, and there they were, Mara, Selene, and Thora, standing inside the house, their giant forms filling the room. Ethan's breath caught. "You're back?" Selene smiled faintly. "We never left. We walk with you always, Callahan." Mara crossed her arms. "You've shown strength. More than most." Thora's stormy gaze softened. "But the greatest test is yet to come." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" They didn't answer. The lantern went out, the storm roared, and when he lit it again, they were gone. 2 days later, the test came. Harris and his men returned, but not with words this time. They brought tools of destruction, axes, fire, ropes. Under the cover of night, they stormed into the fields, intent on tearing down what Ethan had rebuilt. Ethan woke to the sound of crackling. Flames licked the edge of the barn. His crops were trampled. Rage surged through him as he ran into the night. "Harris!" he shouted, his voice breaking the storm's silence. The ranchers froze, torches in hand. Harris sneered. "Told you, boy. This land ain't meant to rise again." Ethan's fists clenched. For a moment fear gripped him, 3 against 1, men stronger, older. But then the ground trembled beneath him and he felt them. Mara's strength in his arms, Selene's love in his chest, Thora's fire in his spirit. He stepped forward. "This land is mine," he roared. "It was my father's and it will live again. You won't take it from me." Something in his voice, something larger than himself, made Harris falter. His men glanced nervously at each other. The torches sputtered in the wind, as though unseen hands snuffed them out. "Leave," Ethan said, his voice steady, "and never set foot here again." For a long moment Harris glared, but then he spat, muttered a curse, and mounted his horse. Within minutes, they were gone, their shadows swallowed by the storm. Ethan stood in the rain, heart pounding, and as he looked back at the ranch, still standing, still his, he saw 3 massive silhouettes in the lightning, standing guard at the edges of the field. Months passed. The barn stood tall once more. The fields blossomed with life. The townsfolk no longer whispered behind Ethan's back. Instead, they offered help, tools, even friendship. Slowly, the Callahan Ranch became a place of hope again, and Ethan knew he had not done it alone. On quiet nights, he still felt them. Mara's strength, Selene's tenderness, Thora's fire. He would never forget the night he survived with the 3 giant women. They had not only given him the land, but shaped him into the man his father had always believed he could be. Years later, as he stood at the porch watching the sunset over thriving fields, Ethan spoke softly to the wind, "Thank you." And though the air was still, he swore he heard 3 voices reply, "You have survived, you have endured, you are worthy." And so, dear listener, remember this: the giants we fear in life are often the very trials that make us strong. They are not there to destroy us, but to forge us into who we were meant to be. What about you? If you were Ethan, could you have faced the 3 giant women? Do you believe challenges in life test us or transform us? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Be Kind Always, for more inspiring stories. Stay strong. Stay kind always.